Remove that ridiculous story from your testimony, young lady. Judge Thompson's gavel cracked against mahogany as Emma Williams stood trembling in the witness box. The Boston courthouse erupted in muffled laughter. Her father's custody attorney shuffled papers nervously. 3 consecutive hearings. 3 times her mother had failed to appear. "Your Honor, she's 12, David Williams protested from the gallery. "And she's lying about classified military programs." Judge Thompson leaned forward, his 20 years of Navy service evident in his bearing. "There are no female Navy SEALs. That program does not exist." Emma's fingers found the compass pendant beneath her collar, tracing the pattern her mother had taught her. The coded sequence felt warm against her palm. Around her, whispers grew louder. Attention-seeking? Divorced kid fantasy? Stolen valor? The opposing counsel smirked. "Your Honor, this demonstrates exactly why custody should be awarded solely to Mr. Williams. The child is clearly—" Heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. Military precision. Multiple boots in perfect synchronization. The courthouse door stood closed, but something was coming. "Before we continue, if you believe children deserve to be heard when they're telling the truth, type truth below. And tell me where you're watching from. This story hits different when I know who's standing with Emma Williams. I read every comment." The mahogany-paneled courtroom of Boston County carried the weight of 100 years of judgments. Light filtered through tall windows, catching dust motes that danced above the proceedings like silent witnesses. At the plaintiff's table, David Williams adjusted his tie nervously. The Boston University history professor looked like he hadn't slept in days, his eyes constantly drifting to his daughter. Emma Williams sat beside her father's attorney with the composed stillness of someone who had grown accustomed to difficult situations. Unlike most children her age in courtrooms, she didn't fidget. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat braid, and around her neck hung that unusual compass pendant that her fingers occasionally traced in specific patterns. Judge Robert Thompson entered, and the bailiff called for all to rise. The judge's military bearing was unmistakable. Back straight, movements economical, gaze assessing. His reputation preceded him, 20 years as a JAG officer before joining the bench, with little patience for what he called civilian theatrics. "We're here to continue the custody hearing for Emma Williams," Judge Thompson announced, scanning documents. "I understand the respondent is once again absent." The opposing counsel, Patricia Vance, rose. "Yes, Your Honor. Commander Jessica Williams has failed to appear for the 3rd consecutive hearing, further demonstrating the pattern of absence we've documented over the past 8 years." David's attorney presented evidence of Jessica's unexplained absences. Missed birthdays, parent-teacher conferences, hospital visits when Emma had pneumonia at 7. The picture painted was one of maternal neglect. "Your Honor," David's attorney said, "Mr. Williams has been the consistent parent in Emma's life. He has never missed a school event, doctor's appointment, or recital. Meanwhile, Commander Williams disappears for months at a time with minimal communication. We believe full custody should be awarded to Mr. Williams, with supervised visitation for Commander Williams when she decides to make herself available." Judge Thompson nodded, making notes. "Ms. Vance, your argument?" "Your Honor, we have attempted to secure Commander Williams's presence for these proceedings multiple times. Her pattern of absence speaks for itself. She claims her work prevents her attendance, yet provides no documentation, no supervisor contacts, not even a consistent explanation of what this work entails. We believe this demonstrates a fundamental lack of prioritization of her child's well-being." Judge Thompson turned his attention to Emma. "I'd like to hear from the minor child. Emma Williams, please approach the witness stand." Emma walked to the stand with unusual composure for a 12-year-old. After being sworn in, she sat with her hands folded in her lap, only occasionally touching the compass pendant. "Emma?" Judge Thompson leaned forward slightly, his tone softening marginally. "Can you tell the court about your relationship with your mother?" Emma's fingers found the compass pendant. "She loves me. She can't always be here, but it's not because she doesn't want to be." "And why can't she be here?" Does she explain her absences to you? She can't tell us where she goes. Emma's voice remained steady. It's classified. A ripple of murmurs moved through the courtroom. Judge Thompson's eyebrow raised fractionally. Classified? He repeated. What exactly does your mother do for work, Emma? Emma hesitated, her fingers tracing the pattern on the pendant that resembled military signal code. She looked at her father, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. She serves in a special Navy program, Emma said, her voice clear despite its softness. She's one of the first female Navy SEALs. The courtroom erupted in poorly suppressed laughter. Judge Thompson's mouth twitched, not quite hiding his disbelief. Opposing counsel didn't bother hiding her smirk. Young lady, Judge Thompson said, removing his glasses with theatrical patience. I appreciate imagination, but this is a court of law. I served 20 years in the United States Navy. There are no female Navy SEALs. That program doesn't exist. The laughter grew louder. Emma's cheeks flushed, but her eyes remained steady. She is, Emma insisted quietly. I'm not lying. This court doesn't appreciate fabrications, even from children, Judge Thompson continued, his voice carrying over the diminishing laughter, especially when those fabrications dishonor the real servicemen who sacrifice daily for our freedoms. David stood up, his face flushed with anger. Your Honor, please, my daughter is not a liar. Mr. Williams, control yourself or I will hold you in contempt, Judge Thompson warned. Now, young lady, I'll give you another chance to explain your mother's absences truthfully. Emma's composure finally cracked, her voice wavering. I am telling the truth. My mother serves our country. She can't tell us where she goes or what she does, but she loves me, and she's a hero, and no one believes me. From the gallery, Mrs. Patterson, Emma's neighbor, whispered to her companion, I've seen strange cars at their house. Government plates, men in suits asking questions when Jessica comes home on leave. Court reporter Margaret Stevens, who had been documenting custody cases for 15 years, noticed something unusual. The child's testimony showed remarkable consistency with previous statements. No contradictions, no embellishments that typically accompanied fabricated stories. Judge Thompson sighed, making another note. Ms. Vance, your cross-examination. The opposing counsel approached with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. Emma, has your mother told you to say these things about being a Navy SEAL? No. Emma's answer was immediate. She never told me directly. I figured it out myself. You figured it out? Ms. Vance repeated skeptically. How exactly? I found her training journal once when I was 8, and I've heard her talking on secure calls, and she has scars and calluses that match special operations training, and she knows things about naval operations that regular people don't know. Dr. Sarah Collins, a military family counselor observing from the gallery, leaned forward. She specialized in children of special operations personnel. The child's behavioral patterns were consistent with military families operating under deep cover protocols. So you've been spying on your mother? Ms. Vance suggested. Objection, David's attorney called. Badgering the witness. Sustained, Judge Thompson said. Ms. Vance, rephrase. Ms. Vance adjusted her approach. Emma, has your father suggested to you that your mother might be involved in classified military operations? No. Emma shook her head. Dad doesn't know either. He just knows she works for the government and can't talk about it. So neither of your parents has actually told you that your mother is a Navy SEAL, yet you're asking this court to believe it's true? I know it's true, Emma said, her voice gaining strength again. Just because adults don't tell you something doesn't mean you can't figure it out. In the gallery, retired Navy Master Chief William Torres, there for a different case, studied Emma's posture and speech patterns. Something about her composure under hostile questioning reminded him of military families he'd known in special operations communities. A court officer approached the bench hurriedly, interrupting the questioning. He whispered something urgent in Judge Thompson's ear. The judge's expression shifted subtly. Confusion, then disbelief, Then something unreadable. "This court will take a 10-minute recess," he announced abruptly. "Counsel, approach the bench before you leave." As the lawyers gathered at the bench, Emma returned to her seat beside her father. David put his arm around her shoulders and whispered something in her ear. She shook her head, still clutching the compass pendant. "What's happening?" David asked his attorney when she returned. "I'm not entirely sure," the attorney replied, looking confused. "The judge received some kind of priority notification. He's asked that we all remain in the courtroom during the recess, but he wouldn't explain why." The minutes ticked by slowly. The gallery whispered among themselves, occasionally glancing at Emma and David. Opposing counsel shuffled papers nervously, checking her watch repeatedly. Mrs. Patterson leaned toward her companion. "I remember now. 3 months ago, I saw Jessica Williams get out of a military transport vehicle, not a regular Navy car, something unmarked, with men in tactical gear." Dr. Collins found herself studying Emma's micro-expressions. The child displayed none of the tells associated with fabricated testimony. No eye movement patterns suggesting deception, no nervous fidgeting typical of children constructing lies under pressure. Master Chief Torres approached David during the recess. "Sir, I couldn't help but notice your daughter's testimony. I served 28 years, including time with Special Operations Support. Her knowledge of naval procedures isn't something a civilian child would typically possess." David looked surprised. "You believe her?" "I've worked with families in highly classified programs. Children often know more than their parents realize, and they develop sophisticated ways of protecting operational security. Your daughter's behavior patterns are familiar." Judge Thompson returned exactly 10 minutes later. His demeanor noticeably changed. He sat down slowly, arranging papers before him with deliberate movements. "Before we continue," he began, his voice carefully neutral, "I've been informed that we will be receiving additional testimony relevant to this case. The court will accommodate this witness as a matter of priority. Ms. Vance stood. "Your Honor, we weren't notified of any additional witnesses. We would request time to prepare for cross-examination." "Noted, counsel," Judge Thompson replied. "However, given the circumstances, I'm going to allow this testimony immediately. You'll understand momentarily." He nodded to the bailiff, who moved to the courtroom doors with unusual formality. Emma's hand tightened on the compass pendant. For the first time since taking the stand, her composure showed cracks, not of fear, but of recognition. She knew that pattern of official protocol. "Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "She's coming." David frowned. "Emma? What?" The bailiff's radio crackled with coded communication. Emma's eyes widened. She understood those codes. "Dr." Collins watched with professional fascination as Emma's body language shifted. The child's posture straightened, shoulders squaring in an unconscious mirror of military bearing. A learned response to imminent authority presence. Master Chief Torres noticed it too. "Sir," he whispered to David, "your daughter just shifted into what we call inspection-ready posture. That's not something you learn from movies." Judge Thompson checked his watch, then looked toward the doors. His expression had transformed from skepticism to something approaching apprehension. Whatever notification he'd received had fundamentally altered his understanding of the situation. Emma traced the compass pendant pattern one final time, then dropped her hand to her side. Her breathing became controlled, measured. The same pattern she'd unconsciously adopted during her mother's rare homecomings. "Your Honor," the bailiff announced formally, "the requested witness has arrived and is prepared to present credentials for your review." The courtroom fell silent. Even the whispers stopped. Emma sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the doors that would soon open. What nobody in that courtroom understood was that Commander Jessica Williams had been stationed less than 20 miles away for the past 6 months, conducting classified training operations that would reshape naval special warfare forever. The heavy doors began to move. The heavy courtroom doors swung open with military precision. Commander Jessica Williams stood in the doorway in full Navy dress blues, her uniform impeccable, medals and insignia catching the light. Her presence commanded immediate attention, shoulders squared, chin lifted, eyes forward. She was not particularly tall, but something in her bearing made her seem formidable. Behind her stood 6 Navy SEALs in formation. 3 men, 3 women, also in dress blues, their faces impassive, their posture perfect. The laughter that had filled the room minutes before evaporated like morning dew under harsh sun. Silence fell so completely that the sound of Commander Williams's measured footsteps echoed as she walked down the center aisle. Judge Thompson slowly rose from his seat, his eyes fixed on insignia and medals that told a story he hadn't believed possible. His face had drained of color, his earlier smugness replaced by something approaching reverence. The SEALs followed Jessica in perfect step, their synchronized movements creating a visual rhythm that held the courtroom transfixed. They formed a line behind the respondents' table, standing at parade rest. Emma's eyes widened, her hand dropping from the pendant as she watched her mother approach. David stood frozen, his expression a complex mixture of vindication and uncertainty. Commander Williams stopped at the appropriate distance from the bench and rendered a perfect salute. Commander Jessica Williams, United States Navy, reporting as ordered, Your Honor. Judge Thompson returned the salute automatically, military muscle memory overriding his judicial persona. The courtroom remained silent, every eye fixed on the commanding figure standing before the bench and the 6 uniformed SEALs positioned behind her. "Permission to approach, Your Honor?" Commander Williams asked, her voice clear and measured. Judge Thompson nodded, seemingly unable to find words. Commander Williams walked forward and presented a sealed folder to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. "These documents were declassified this morning specifically for this hearing, sir. They should explain my absences and verify my daughter's testimony." What the classified documents revealed was extraordinary. 7 years earlier, the Navy had initiated an experimental program to integrate women into SEAL teams. The selection process was brutal. Of the initial 47 candidates, only 6 completed the full training protocol. Commander Williams had been among the first class. Her service record, now partially declassified, detailed missions that pushed the boundaries of human endurance. Operations in 3 different theaters. Specialized training that took her away from home for months at a time. The program had been classified at the highest levels for a simple reason. If foreign adversaries knew that female operatives were being integrated into America's most elite units, it would fundamentally change how they approached counterintelligence operations. Jessica Williams hadn't just been absent from her daughter's life, she had been helping to prove that women could serve in roles previously thought impossible. Every missed birthday, every hospital visit she couldn't attend, every school play she'd missed had been in service of opening doors for the next generation of female warriors. The judge accepted the folder with a slight nod, his earlier certainty visibly shaken. He opened it carefully, adjusting his glasses as he began to read. His eyes widened progressively as he turned each page. While the judge reviewed the documents, the unit of SEALs moved in perfect unison to stand behind Emma, a living wall of protection and validation. One of them, Lieutenant Maria Anderson, placed a hand briefly on Emma's shoulder before resuming her position. Emma's fingers traced the pattern on her pendant one last time. Across the courtroom, her mother's hand made the same motion at her side, a private language between them, finally visible to all. The documents painted a picture of sacrifice on multiple levels. Not just Jessica's sacrifice of family time for national service, but Emma's sacrifice of having a mother whose heroism could never be acknowledged. David's sacrifice of understanding why his wife disappeared for months without explanation. But most significantly, they revealed the truth that Emma had somehow intuited, that her mother was serving in ways that required absolute secrecy, ways that honored the highest traditions of military service while breaking new ground for women in combat roles. Judge Thompson continued reading, his expression shifting from skepticism to amazement to something approaching awe. Opposing counsel Patricia Vance shifted uncomfortably in her seat, shuffling papers without purpose, clearly unprepared for this development. David Williams watched the scene unfold with a complex expression. Pride and hurt and vindication all mingled together. After several minutes of silence, broken only by the sound of turning pages, Judge Thompson finally looked up from the documents. His face had transformed, the earlier mockery replaced by something approaching reverence. "The court will take a 30-minute recess," he announced, his voice slightly unsteady. "When we reconvene, this hearing will continue in my chambers with limited attendance. Commander Williams, Mr. Williams, counsel for both parties and the minor child only." As people filed out of the courtroom, many casting backward glances at the SEALs who remained at attention, Emma finally moved. She walked directly to her mother, stopping just short of embracing her, understanding instinctively that while in uniform, in formation, certain protocols had to be maintained. Commander Williams looked down at her daughter, and for a brief moment, the military bearing softened. "You kept faith," she said quietly. "Always," Emma replied. The bailiff approached. "Commander, the judge has arranged a conference room where your unit can wait comfortably." Commander Williams nodded. "Thank you." She turned to her unit. "At ease. Lieutenant Anderson, you'll accompany me to the judge's chambers. The rest of you remain on standby." The SEALs acknowledged the order with crisp nods, then filed out behind the bailiff. Lieutenant Anderson remained standing at parade rest near Commander Williams. In the nearly empty courtroom, David finally approached his wife. He stopped several feet away, his expression guarded. 8 years, he said quietly. 8 years of not knowing, of watching Emma wonder if you cared at all. "I know," Jessica replied, her voice equally soft but firm. "And I'll answer for that. But not here, not now." David nodded once, then looked at Lieutenant Anderson and the remaining SEALs waiting by the door. "So it's all true. Everything Emma said." "She's more observant than we realized," Jessica said, a hint of pride in her voice. "She put the pieces together years ago. Never said a word to me about it until recently." Emma stood between her parents, still not touching either one, her eyes moving between them. "I knew you wouldn't believe me, Dad." "No one would. That's why I never told you what I figured out." Before David could respond, the bailiff returned. "Judge Thompson is ready for you now." Judge Thompson's chambers were lined with military memorabilia and law books, two worlds that had shaped his identity. He sat behind his desk, the classified documents open before him, his earlier certainty replaced by humility. "Please be seated," he said, gesturing to the chairs arranged before his desk. Lieutenant Anderson took a position near the door, standing at parade rest. Once everyone was settled, Judge Thompson cleared his throat. "Commander Williams, I owe your daughter an apology." These documents confirm the existence of the program she described, a classified initiative to integrate women into special operations forces, including a modified SEAL training protocol. Commander Williams sat with perfect posture, her demeanor professional. "The program has been active for 7 years, Your Honor. I was among the first candidates selected." "Which explains your absences." Judge Thompson nodded. "Deployments, training cycles, missions that cannot be discussed?" "Yes, sir. My service required absolute secrecy, even from my family." Jessica's gaze shifted to David. "My husband was only told I was on classified assignments. The nature of those assignments remained confidential." David ran a hand through his hair. "I understood she was serving, but the length and frequency of absences became impossible to explain to Emma. When Jessica couldn't even call during emergencies, when she missed Emma's hospitalization with pneumonia, her elementary school graduation, I thought she had simply chosen her career over her family." "I served my country at the cost of serving my daughter," Jessica said, the first crack appearing in her professional demeanor. "I'm here to correct that imbalance." Judge Thompson turned to Emma. "How did you know about your mother's actual role? These documents indicate that information was classified at the highest levels." Emma touched her pendant. She never told me directly, but I found her training journal once when I was 8. It didn't say SEAL anywhere, but it had swimming distances and times, combat exercises, names of instructors I later researched. And I overheard things when she was on secure calls. I put it together. "And you kept her secret?" Judge Thompson said with newfound respect, "even when no one believed you?" "Some things are more important than being believed," Emma said simply. "Commander," the judge continued, "these documents explain your absence today and at previous hearings. What they don't explain is why you've chosen to appear now and with your unit. The program remains classified, yet you've made a very public statement by appearing in this courtroom." Jessica straightened in her chair. "Sir, our unit completed its final mission 3 weeks ago. The existence of the program is being declassified in stages, with limited information becoming public next month. When I learned of today's custody hearing and the line of questioning my daughter was facing, I requested emergency partial declassification from my commanding officer. It was granted this morning." She placed another document on the judge's desk. "This authorizes me to confirm my role in the program and acknowledge the existence of female operators in naval special warfare. The specifics of our missions, training protocols, and capabilities remain classified." "And your unit's presence today?" Judge Thompson asked. "They volunteered, sir, to support both me and my daughter, to help correct a wrong done to Emma by the secrecy our mission required." Lieutenant Anderson spoke for the first time. "Permission to speak, Your Honor?" Judge Thompson nodded. "Our unit operates as a family, sir. Commander Williams has led us through situations I cannot describe, but which tested every limit of human endurance. When we learned her daughter was being disbelieved, mocked for telling the truth about her mother, we unanimously requested to appear, to stand witness." Judge Thompson nodded slowly, then turned to David. "Mr. Williams, this changes the context of your custody petition significantly. Do you wish to proceed?" David looked at his wife, then his daughter. "I don't know. I filed for custody because I believed Emma needed stability, predictability. I thought Jessica was choosing to be absent. Now I learn she's been serving in ways I couldn't have imagined. I need time to process this." "Your Honor," Jessica interjected, "if I may, I have requested a transfer to training operations, still classified but based stateside with predictable hours. My unit has completed our assigned missions. We've proven what needed to be proven." Judge Thompson closed the folder. "This court will take this new information under advisement. Given the classified nature of much of this testimony, I'm sealing the record of today's proceedings. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks to revisit the custody arrangement in light of Commander Williams's changed circumstances." He turned to Emma. "Young lady, I owe you an apology. You showed remarkable courage today, standing by the truth even when disbelieved by those in authority, including myself. That's a rare quality." Emma nodded, accepting the apology with the same composure she had shown throughout. "If there's nothing else," Judge Thompson said, "this hearing is adjourned until 2 weeks from today. Commander Williams, please extend my respects to your unit." As they left the judge's chambers, Emma walked between her parents, not touching either one, but closer than before. The rest of the SEAL unit waited in the hallway, standing to attention as Commander Williams emerged. "At ease," she told them. "The judge has sealed the proceedings and adjourned until further notice. Thank you for your presence today." Lieutenant Anderson stepped forward. "Permission to speak freely, Commander?" Jessica nodded. "Your daughter has the makings of an operator," Anderson said with a small smile. "Observant, disciplined, courageous under fire." Emma looked up, surprise and pride flashing across her face. "That's enough, Lieutenant," Jessica said, but there was warmth in her voice. "My daughter will choose her own path when the time comes." As they walked toward the courthouse exit, David finally broke his silence. "Where will you stay tonight? Your apartment was rented out years ago." "The Navy has arranged accommodations," Jessica replied. "No." Emma's voice was firm. "Mom, come home with us, please, just for tonight." Jessica and David exchanged a long look over their daughter's head, years of separation and misunderstanding hanging between them. "Just for tonight," David finally agreed. "We have a lot to talk about." Jessica nodded, then turned to her unit. "Dismissed. Report to base at 0800 tomorrow." The SEALs saluted and departed, moving with the same synchronized precision they had shown in the courtroom. Only Lieutenant Anderson remained. "Commander," she said quietly, "the team wanted you to give this to your daughter." She handed Jessica a small object, then saluted and walked away. Jessica looked down at the item in her palm, a challenge coin, the special operations insignia modified with a subtle marker known only to those in their program. "We give these to people who keep faith when everything tells them not to," she said, placing it in Emma's hand. "Welcome to the family." The coin gleamed in Emma's palm, a tangible validation of the truth she had known and protected all along. The Williams home stood on a quiet street in a Boston suburb, a colonial-style house with a swing on the porch and a basketball hoop in the driveway. Jessica paused at the front steps, taking in the sight of a place she had visited only sporadically over the past 8 years. "Dad repainted last summer," Emma said, noticing her mother's gaze. "I helped with the trim." David unlocked the door and stepped aside. "It's different inside. We renovated the kitchen 2 years ago." Jessica nodded and entered, her movements still precise and economical even in civilian space. She had changed out of her dress uniform into civilian clothes, dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. But her military bearing remained unmistakable. The house felt both familiar and foreign to her. Family photos lined the walls, documenting Emma's growth, soccer tournaments, science fairs, piano recitals. Jessica stopped before each one, studying the moments she had missed. "I kept albums for you," David said quietly, "with dates and descriptions. They're in your study." Jessica turned to him, surprise evident in her expression. "You kept my study?" "It seemed important," he replied with a shrug. "For when you came home." Emma disappeared upstairs and returned with a small wooden box. "I kept things too," she said, placing it on the coffee table. "Things I thought you'd want to know about." Jessica sat on the couch, opening the box carefully. Inside lay a collection of mementos, report cards, certificates, medals from swimming competitions, handwritten notes. "You swim competitively?" Jessica asked, lifting a gold medal. "Started when I was 9, Emma nodded. "I'm best at long distance. Coach says I have unusual endurance for my age." A hint of pride colored her voice. Jessica's fingers traced the medal. "Your grandmother was a champion swimmer. My mother. She would have been proud." "I know," Emma said. "Dad told me. He talks about your family a lot. Make sure I know where I come from on both sides." 2 weeks later, they returned to the courthouse. This time, Jessica arrived with her family rather than her unit. The custody arrangement was formalized. Joint custody with Jessica's new stateside assignment, allowing regular presence in the home. As they walked down the courthouse steps together, Emma between her parents, Judge Thompson watched from his window. He had learned something that day about the courage it takes to believe in truth when the whole world tells you otherwise. In his desk drawer lay a copy of the sealed proceedings. A reminder that sometimes the most incredible stories are the most true, and that heroes often come in the most unexpected forms. To everyone who typed truth and shared where you're watching from, thank you for standing with our heroes. Subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next one.